Antarctica, a frozen wasteland at the edge of the world. A place so cold, even sound seems to freeze midair. Winds scream across endless white plains, carving mountains of ice older than civilization itself. To most, it's just another continent. But to those who know the stories, it's a white graveyard of secrets. Beneath that silence, something stirs. Machines hum in the dark, lights flicker under the ice, and somewhere, something ancient remembers. In 1938, before the world went to war, Hitler's Third Reich launched an expedition here, to a region they called New Swabia. Officially, it was about whaling routes and weather research. Unofficially, it was about territory, power, and something far older than the Reich itself. German aircraft marked the ice with swastikas. Supply ships vanished. Submarines slipped quietly beneath the Southern Ocean, never seen again. Some say they were building bases. Others believe they found something that changed everything. When Berlin fell in 1945, the world thought the story ended. But whispers began almost immediately. Hitler didn't die in the bunker. He fled south, and the remnants of the Reich followed him. By the late 1940s, U.S. Navy intelligence was hearing strange reports. Disc-shaped craft flying from beneath the ice, glowing objects tracked on radar, radio interference across the southern hemisphere. Reconnaissance aircraft spotted heat signatures where no life should exist. If those stories were true, someone would have to find out. So, in 1946, the United States launched the largest Antarctic operation in history. 70 ships, 33 aircraft, and nearly 5,000 men under one name, Task Force 68. Their mission, officially, scientific exploration. Unofficially, to secure the continent, to locate whatever was hidden there before anyone else could. They called it Operation Highjump, led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, one of the most decorated explorers alive. A 6-month mission of mapping, research, and survival. But what happened next would end that mission in just 6 weeks and bury its true purpose beneath decades of classified silence. Because somewhere beyond those frozen peaks, the Navy found something they couldn't explain. And once they did, nothing in military history would ever be the same again. Operation Highjump. It began just months after the smoke of World War II cleared. The world was rebuilding, but the U.S. Navy was already looking south, toward a frozen land few had ever seen and fewer understood. At the center of it all was one man, Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Byrd wasn't just any officer. He was a national hero, a veteran aviator, explorer, and the first American to fly over the South Pole. He'd led expeditions before, mapped unknown terrain, and faced conditions that killed lesser men. So when the Navy decided to launch its largest peacetime operation ever, it made sense that Byrd would lead it. But the size and scale of this mission raised eyebrows even within the military itself. It was called Task Force 68, later known to history as Operation Highjump. The operation involved nearly 70 ships, 4,700 men, and 33 aircraft. It wasn't a handful of scientists with notebooks. It was a full-scale naval task force. Among the vessels were the USS Mount Olympus, the command ship, the USS Pine Island, a seaplane tender, the USS Yancey and USS Merrick, massive supply ships, and the USS Currituck, another tender equipped for amphibious aircraft operations. Even an aircraft carrier, the USS Philippines Sea, joined the fleet, carrying heavy transport planes and fighter escorts. All of this for a mission officially described as training troops for cold weather warfare and conducting scientific research. But why would the US Navy send a battle-ready armada into an uninhabited desert of ice? Why were destroyers and carriers assigned to map glaciers? And why, just a year after defeating the Axis powers, was there talk of neutralizing potential enemy activity at the South Pole? In Admiral Byrd's own notes, now partially declassified, there's a line that stands out. The importance of establishing American presence before others. Others. Who were these others he referred to? The war was over. Germany was gone. Japan had surrendered. And yet the tone of Byrd's writing suggested urgency, as if the Navy feared someone else was already there. Rumors soon began to spread through intelligence circles, whispers that remnants of the Nazi war machine had escaped. That before Germany fell, U-boats fled south, carrying scientists, technology, and something the world wasn't meant to see. They called it Base 211, a supposed fortress built deep beneath the Antarctic ice. Some said it was a last refuge for Hitler's elite. Others claimed it was more than a base. It was a laboratory. German records confirmed the 1938 New Swabia expedition, a real mission to claim land in Antarctica before the war began. Nazi aircraft photographed the terrain, dropped markers with the swastika emblem, and returned with samples that were, according to some reports, of great interest to the Führer. Hitler had believed in hidden worlds and ancient powers buried in the earth. And now, barely a year after his defeat, an American fleet was steaming toward the same coordinates. The official purpose remained science, but the composition of Task Force 68 told another story. Destroyers equipped with depth charges, escort ships carrying anti-submarine sonar, fighter planes armed with machine guns, radar operators trained to track fast-moving aerial targets. That wasn't a research mission. That was a military strike force. Even the Navy's secrecy surrounding Highjump felt unusual. Cameras were restricted, reports were filtered. Byrd gave only vague press statements before departure, promising to expand the limits of human knowledge. But as the ships moved deeper into the Southern Ocean, radio operators began intercepting strange signals, short bursts of static, metallic interference, unknown frequencies bouncing off the ionosphere. It was enough to make a few officers wonder if something was transmitting back from beneath the ice. Whatever the official explanation, one fact remains. Operation Highjump wasn't designed for diplomacy. It wasn't a scientific curiosity, and it wasn't a test of endurance. It was a covert reconnaissance mission, disguised as exploration. And for those who were there, many believed it carried a much darker objective. Because Highjump, despite every official statement, was not a research mission. It was a search and destroy operation. And what they were searching for was already waiting. The ice was supposed to be empty. No enemies, no cities, no war. But 6 weeks after Operation Highjump began, the US Navy was running for its life. The mission that was planned to last 6 months ended abruptly. Ships turned north. Planes were grounded. Men whispered of things that couldn't exist. And those who asked too many questions were told to stay silent. Admiral Byrd's own flight logs tell part of the story. On February 19th, 1947, his aircraft took off from the USS Pine Island on a routine reconnaissance run. The weather was clear, visibility perfect. But within minutes, his instruments began to fail. Compasses spun wildly, radios cracked with static. At 9,000 feet, Byrd saw what he described as shining metallic discs emerging from the clouds. They moved fast, too fast. No known aircraft in 1946 could maneuver like that. The discs circled the formation, darting in and out of visibility, glowing faint white against the ice. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanished. But not all encounters ended that peacefully. According to accounts later uncovered by Soviet intelligence, radar operators aboard the USS Mount Olympus and USS Brownson reported unknown contacts moving at impossible speeds. Fighter patrols were scrambled. Moments later, those same pilots were screaming over the radio. "They're all around us. They're moving too fast." Static, then silence. One aircraft never returned. Another went down in flames near the ice shelf. Crews reported seeing beams of light cutting through the sky, melting snow and metal on impact. The KGB declassified file 6797A and a 2006 Russian documentary based on it both describe what they called the Battle for Antarctica. They claimed that flying saucers, origin unknown, attacked the fleet with directed energy weapons. 3 aircraft destroyed, several sailors dead. The Navy called it accidents due to severe weather. But weather doesn't melt aluminum fuselage. The surviving pilots described something else. No sound of engines, no exhaust, no flight pattern any human pilot could replicate. Just blinding speed and control. In Chile, reporters for El Mercurio managed to interview Admiral Byrd before he returned home. He didn't deny the rumors. Instead, he warned that the United States must prepare for the possibility of flying objects that can travel from pole to pole in a matter of minutes. Those words, printed once, vanished from every American archive soon after. But foreign intelligence didn't forget them. When Task Force 68 retreated, it did so fast, abandoning supplies, halting scientific operations, and radioing silence to Washington. The 6-month mission had lasted barely 40 days. Byrd's men were exhausted, shaken, and confused. Officially, 4 servicemen were killed in air crashes. Unofficially, the number was higher. Back in Washington, Admiral Byrd was immediately debriefed. Witnesses say he spent hours behind closed doors with senior military intelligence. After that meeting, he never spoke publicly about the operation again. His official report was stripped of all references to unidentified craft. His personal journal was classified. Years later, a so-called secret diary surfaced. It claimed Byrd's missing hours during that flight weren't due to radio failure, but something far stranger. According to the diary, his aircraft was pulled toward an opening in the ice, descending into a warm, green valley filled with life. He described seeing mammoth-like creatures, ancient forests, and a radiant city built by a race calling themselves the Ariani. They spoke perfect English, told him mankind was too immature for atomic power, and warned of future wars. When they released him, he wrote, "The engines started on their own." Now, there are problems with that story. The diary's timeline doesn't match the operation. It describes the North Pole, not the South. And stylistically, it doesn't match Byrd's known writing. Still, the question remains. Why did the Navy classify his original notes? Why was the Admiral, once America's favorite explorer, silenced for the rest of his life. Within months of his return, Byrd withdrew from public view. He died 9 years later. The pages of a supposed diary were found only after his son's mysterious death in 1988, alone in a warehouse, guarding his father's papers. The official record claims Operation Highjump was cut short by weather. But those who were there told a different story, of glowing discs in the fog, of aircraft torn apart mid-air, of something intelligent beneath the ice, defending its territory. The Navy buried the evidence. The Soviets called it the first battle of a new war, the War for Antarctica. And to this day, no one truly knows what happened in those 6 frozen weeks. Officially, 4 men died. Unofficially, no one knows what they found. After Operation Highjump ended in silence, the rumors began. Some say the Navy's retreat wasn't because of bad weather, but because they found something, or someone, already there. From that moment, the myths surrounding Antarctica grew louder, stranger, and harder to ignore. The most persistent of these is the legend of Base 211, a secret Nazi stronghold buried deep beneath the ice. According to post-war reports, the German submarines U-530 and U-977 both surrendered to Argentine authorities months after Germany's official capitulation. Neither vessel could explain where they'd been during that time. The crews spoke vaguely about a final voyage south. Some even claimed that part of their mission was to deliver high-ranking Nazi officials and secret cargo to the South Pole, a place where a new Reich could rise in secrecy. The story spread fast. Intelligence officers, historians, and journalists all began connecting the dots. After all, the Nazis had gone to Antarctica once before. In 1938 and 1939, Germany launched the new Swabia expedition. The expedition's goals sounded innocent, surveying for whaling routes and natural resources. But the ships carried advanced aerial cameras, heavy equipment, and even experimental aircraft. They photographed vast stretches of land, dropped metal markers stamped with the swastika, and reported discovering a region that was strangely free of ice. Hitler named it Neuschwabenland and claimed it for the Reich. After the war, the legend grew darker. Whispers of an underground base heated by geothermal vents, with submarine tunnels and hidden hangars for advanced aircraft. Engineers and SS officers who disappeared in 1945 were said to have ended up there, working in secrecy, perfecting technology far beyond anything the Allies possessed. This secret force, called the Last Battalion, was believed to be continuing Hitler's dream underground, literally. Adding fuel to the theory was the Nazi obsession with the occult. The Ahnenerbe Society, Hitler's own archaeological think tank, searched for evidence of an ancient Aryan civilization, the so-called ancient gods, from whom they claimed descent. They looked for entrances to Hollow Earth, gateways to hidden realms, and sources of unlimited power. Their scientists studied sacred geometry, magnetism, and anti-gravity. And out of that came the legends of the Haunebu flying disc projects and Die Glock, the Bell, a rumored time-bending, gravity-defying device said to glow with blue light and hum like a turbine. So what if Admiral Byrd's Task Force 68 didn't just encounter something alien, but something man-made? What if they stumbled upon remnants of those experiments? Still operational, still guarded. A handful of surviving scientists, working under the ice with technology that shouldn't exist. It sounds impossible. But so did flying saucers in 1947. And while governments called the stories myths, the secrecy only made them grow. Theories refused to die. Because somewhere beneath that endless ice lies the possibility that the war never truly ended. After the war ended and the rumors of Base 211 refused to fade, something unexpected happened. In 1959, the world's superpowers, nations that barely trusted each other, suddenly agreed on one thing. They signed the Antarctic Treaty. On paper, it sounded noble. No military activity, no nuclear testing, no mining, drilling, or private exploration of any kind. Antarctica, they said, would belong to no one and to everyone. A continent of peace, preserved for science. But think about that for a moment. The Cold War was raging, nuclear tension at its peak, and yet the United States, the Soviet Union, and over a dozen other nations decided to demilitarize the most resource-rich landmass on Earth. No other treaty in human history has ever achieved that kind of cooperation. And in more than 60 years, it's never been broken. Today, every major power maintains a presence there. Dozens of research stations, high-security zones, and restricted flight corridors. Certain areas remain permanently off-limits, even to scientists. Satellite imagery of those regions appears blurred, cropped, or missing entirely. No commercial flights pass directly over the pole, and private expeditions that venture too far are quickly intercepted and turned back. Officially, this is all about environmental protection. But what exactly are they protecting? Are they safeguarding the planet, or something else entirely? Because despite the treaty, military cargo still moves through secret channels. New radar installations appear where no research exists. And deep below the ice, sensors continue to detect heat and motion. Whatever lies beneath the Antarctic surface has been hidden behind an international wall of silence for more than 6 decades. The question no one dares to ask is simple. What are they protecting us from? Or protecting down there? In November 1995, a Navy C-130 transport plane was sent out from McMurdo Station. Its mission sounded routine: to check on a team of 15 scientists stationed in Marie Byrd Land, one of the most remote regions on Earth. When the crew arrived, visibility was perfect. The snow was calm, the horizon clear. They could see the scientists' camp from the air. Fuel tanks, snowmobiles, equipment, all neatly lined up. Everything was in its place, except the people. No movement, no footprints, no radio response. The camp looked frozen in time. The crew landed. They found hot coffee cups inside the huts, frozen mid-sip. Instruments still running. But not a single trace of the 15 men and women who'd been there a week earlier. Orders came quickly. Perform one last search pattern, then return to base. A week later, the radio at McMurdo crackled to life. The missing scientists were back, frantic, begging for immediate extraction. When the C-130 returned, the rescue crew found the team alive but silent. They were pale, shaken, and refused to speak. On the 2-hour flight back, not one of them said a word. When they landed, they wouldn't even unbuckle their harnesses. They just sat, eyes empty. The next morning, 2 men in black suits arrived at the base. The scientists were flown out again, destination unknown. Their equipment was sealed and later shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. The same facility linked to Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force's secret UFO investigation program. No official report on the incident was ever released. And the scientists? They were never seen again. In 2003, a covert Navy SEAL unit was deployed near Byrd Glacier. Their mission, officially, was reconnaissance. But the team's commander, call sign Spartan 1, later said it was something else. Their orders were to locate a missing civilian researcher and secure his findings. When they reached his last coordinates, they didn't find a man. They found a structure. It jutted 18 feet out of the ice, perfectly smooth, dark, and geometric. Not rock, not metal, something in between. Warm to the touch despite temperatures of -40. The entrance was a black octagonal door, 23 feet tall, engraved with strange runes and a pattern resembling a star map. When they pressed against it, it opened silently, balanced as if weightless. Inside, the air was warm, around 70 degrees. Their footsteps echoed across walls that glowed faint lime green. The room stretched for 9 acres, nearly 7 football fields long, covered in carvings that looked like hieroglyphs but matched no known language. Some resembled Sumerian, others Mayan, yet none were exact. The scientists they were sent to recover stood near a ramp leading deeper underground. He said the structure covered 62 acres in total, most of it buried beneath the glacier. Spartan 1 claimed the air inside felt alive, charged with energy. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to hum, like a machine in hibernation. Later, satellite data confirmed unusual heat signatures below the glacier. But every record from that mission, names, telemetry, even aircraft logs, was classified. The SEAL team was told to forget what they'd seen. But Spartan 1 didn't. He described it as either the remains of an ancient civilization or something not built by humans at all. In the early 1980s, a Navy pilot named Brian was assigned to a medical evacuation flight over Antarctica. His C-130's path accidentally crossed into a no-fly zone marked Air Sampling Station. As they passed overhead, the crew saw something impossible. A perfectly round hole in the ice, nearly 300 feet wide, surrounded by tire tracks and heavy machinery. It looked man-made and active. After landing back at McMurdo, Brian and his crew were ordered to the commander's office. Waiting inside were 2 men in dark suits. They asked a few questions, then gave one order. What you saw, you did not see. Years later, Brian overheard other crews referring to that same area. They called it the entrance. Some said scientists there were meeting visitors. When he asked what kind of visitors, they only smiled and said, "Not human." Satellite images of Antarctica have revealed what look like 3 massive pyramids, their sides aligning almost perfectly with true north, south, east, and west. Scientists dismiss them as natural formations, but their symmetry is uncanny. The Piri-Reis map of 1513 and the Orontius Phineas map of 1531 both show Antarctica's coastline ice-free. That shouldn't be possible. Antarctica's been frozen for over 12 million years. So how could early explorers chart its rivers and mountains with such accuracy? Historian Charles Hapgood proposed a controversial idea: crustal displacement. He believed Earth's outer shell once shifted violently, moving entire continents thousands of miles. If Antarctica once lay farther north, it could have been temperate. a place where civilizations thrived before a sudden freeze buried them. It sounds like myth, but the timing matches Plato's account of Atlantis, a powerful civilization wiped out around 12,000 years ago. If Hapgood was right, the pyramids under the ice might not be alien at all. They could be what's left of Atlantis itself, preserved beneath miles of ice, waiting to be uncovered. In 2002, a television company called Atlantis TV announced an expedition to film an alleged archaeological dig in Antarctica. They never returned. Weeks later, Navy rescuers discovered their abandoned camp. Cameras, supplies, everything was still there. Among the recovered gear was a videotape. Scientists at McMurdo were shown the footage. According to those who saw it, it revealed massive ruins and structures 2 miles below the ice. The tape was immediately classified. The Navy seized all remaining material. Atlantis TV sued to reclaim their property and lost. Soon after, the company vanished. No footage, no records, no answers. Only one line remains from an internal report leaked years later. They found the footage, but you'll never see it. To this day, these stories, the vanished scientists, the black octagon, the forbidden hole, the pyramids, the missing crew, remain unverified. But they share one chilling pattern. Each begins with an unexplained discovery. Each ends with silence and men in black suits. Whatever hides beneath Antarctica's ice, ancient, alien, or man-made, it's clear that someone is still watching. And every time the truth gets too close to the surface, it disappears again into the cold. For all the stories, the disappearances, the rumors of hidden bases and ancient cities, one thing is absolutely true. Antarctica is not as dead as it looks. Beneath miles of frozen ice lies a world that science has only begun to uncover. More than 400 subglacial lakes have been discovered, sealed off from sunlight, air, and the rest of the planet for millions of years. The largest of them, Lake Vostok, sits more than 2 miles below the surface. It's a body of liquid water the size of Lake Ontario, trapped there since before humans existed. When Russian scientists drilled into it in 2012, they stopped just as the pressurized lake water began to surge upward. They allowed a small amount to freeze inside the borehole, and when they studied it, they found something strange. Bacterial DNA, nothing familiar, nothing classified as any known species. It suggested that life had adapted, evolving completely isolated from the outside world for over 15 million years. And Lake Vostok isn't unique. Under the ice are entire systems of rivers, geothermal vents, and hidden caverns kept warm by volcanic heat. Temperatures there can reach above freezing, perfect for microbial life or something more complex. Even NASA has admitted that these ecosystems could help explain how life might survive on frozen moons like Europa or Enceladus. In other words, Antarctica already hides alien worlds. They're just beneath our feet. And scientists are still cautious about drilling too deep, afraid of contamination or awakening something that's been untouched since before the Ice Age. If life can endure that long in complete darkness, evolving in secret, unseen by the surface world, then maybe the myths aren't so far-fetched. Because if life survived under the ice for 15 million years, who's to say intelligence couldn't have? So after decades of cover-ups, vanishings, and whispered reports, the question remains: What really lies beneath Antarctica's ice? There isn't one answer. There are several. Each one sounds impossible, until you realize every one of them explains at least part of the evidence. The first is the Nazi legacy theory, that somewhere below the frozen surface, the remnants of the Third Reich built their final fortress, Base 211, a city powered by geothermal heat, run by descendants of SS scientists who escaped after the war. Over the decades, they've advanced their technology far beyond what we know. Silent propulsion, directed energy, and anti-gravity craft first glimpsed during Operation Highjump. Then comes the ancient civilization theory. The idea that long before humanity's recorded history, an advanced culture thrived in Antarctica's temperate past, the builders of the pyramids seen on satellite scans. When the Earth shifted, their cities were buried overnight. Their survivors scattered, becoming the gods of Sumer, Egypt, and the Maya, all telling stories that begin with the same flood and end with a promise to return. A third theory merges both history and science, the extraterrestrial collaboration theory, that deep beneath the ice, human and non-human entities are conducting joint experiments, studying climate, energy, even genetic research. The repeated mentions of visitors, magnetic distortions, and unusual heat signatures all seem to point toward intelligent activity that continues today. And finally, the Hollow Earth hypothesis, that vast caverns, warmed by volcanic vents, stretch for hundreds of miles under the continent, an entire biosphere hidden from the surface. Maybe natural, maybe inhabited. Each theory contradicts the others, and yet all of them fit the puzzle. Something is down there, something powerful enough to unite science, myth, and military secrecy under one frozen roof. Today, Antarctica remains the most heavily restricted place on Earth. Try zooming in on Google Earth. Certain coordinates are blurred, distorted, or outright erased. Satellite photos that once showed geometric patterns or cave openings have quietly vanished from public archives. Airspace over several southern sectors is permanently off limits. Civilian pilots are ordered to divert hundreds of miles off course, and private expeditions that try to explore beyond approved research zones are stopped before they even start, denied permits, or intercepted by military patrols in the region. Officially, it's about environmental preservation. Unofficially, it feels more like containment. In recent years, scientists stationed at research bases have reported strange readings, magnetic anomalies that shift without pattern, instruments disrupted by invisible fields, and energy spikes coming from deep underground. In 2018, detectors studying cosmic rays picked up particles moving upward from beneath the ice, as if something below was generating power. NASA called it anomalous. Others called it proof. Even communication satellites passing over the pole experience brief moments of static, unexplained interference that no one can trace. And every now and then, seismic monitors record low-frequency vibrations, rhythmic, mechanical, like something moving beneath miles of solid ice. The official reports call it glacial movement. But the frequency is too steady, too controlled. Something beneath the Antarctic ice is active. Something still operating after millions of years, or perhaps only recently awakened. The governments of the world won't say what it is. But if power is being generated down there, if signals are still being sent, then someone or something is listening. And maybe, just maybe, what started with Operation Highjump never really ended. 70 years after Operation Highjump, Antarctica remains the only place on Earth where history simply stops. Everywhere else, time leaves traces, ruins, bones, scars in the soil. But here, the past is buried under miles of silence. If you look at it from space, the white continent reflects everything. Sunlight, clouds, even the radio signals that try to pierce its surface. It reflects all light and maybe all truth. The wind that howls across its endless plains has carried no new names since Byrd's fleet vanished beyond the horizon. Every expedition that came after brought back data, samples, coordinates, but not answers. They tell us Antarctica is just ice, a frozen laboratory, a blank page of geology and science. But maybe it's more like a sealed book, one written long before we learned to read it. Was Admiral Byrd chasing phantoms? Or was he trying to keep them from reaching us? Are the governments of the world protecting us from what's down there, or protecting it from us? Every generation adds its own theory. Nazis, Atlanteans, visitors from the stars. But the truth, whatever it is, has been entombed longer than our species has existed. And the ice doesn't lie. It just waits. So when the last layer finally melts, and it will, what story will rise from beneath? Will it be a forgotten human empire, the remnants of the Reich, or something that's been waiting since before humanity began? Somewhere down there, machines still hum, lights still flicker, and something ancient remembers. Until we open the ice, we'll never know. Whether we're the first explorers of this world or the last survivors of theirs.
This is Wartime Phantoms. Mission log complete. Thanks for watching, soldiers. If you've made it this far, consider yourself part of the unit. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep this operation alive. More classified stories are already inbound. Stay vigilant. Stay in the shadows. Wartime Phantoms. Over and out.